So today, we're going to dig into a really fascinating piece of research about tiny magnetic robots. Robots designed to deliver medicine deep inside the body. This paper looks at a super clever way of combining two different kinds of these robots to get around a really tough medical problem. Now, you've probably seen headlines like this one floating around. Tiny robots to cure kidney disease. It's the kind of science that gets people really excited and, understandably, sparks a whole lot of conversation. And that's the big question, right? What's the real story here? So in this explainer, we're going to look past the hype, go straight to the source, and break down what the science says, exactly as the researchers presented it. Okay, let's get into it. So, first things first, we need to understand the exact problem these scientists were trying to solve. And it all boils down to one thing: precision. Okay, think about something like an organ transplant. To stop your body from rejecting a new kidney, you have to take some really powerful drugs. But when you take those drugs, they go everywhere, flooding your whole system. And that can have some pretty serious toxic side effects on your other healthy organs. So, the big question is, how do you get that medicine only to the place that needs it? Well, this is where it gets interesting. Right now, there's a big trade-off. On one hand, you have tethered robots. Think of them like steerable catheters. They're great because they're easy to control and pull back out. The problem, they're just too big to get into the tiniest little blood vessels. Then, on the other hand, you have these super tiny, untethered micro-robots. They can go pretty much anywhere, but they're incredibly hard to steer and almost impossible to get back. It's a real catch-22. So, faced with that problem, these researchers came up with a really innovative solution, one that basically tries to get the best of both worlds. Let's take a look at how they designed this thing. And this image pretty much says it all. They created what is essentially a mothership and drone system. You have a larger tethered robot, the mothership, that can navigate the body's main arterial highways. And it carries a smaller, untethered robot, the drone, as its payload. So let's define our terms. The mothership is called a magnetic soft continuum robot, or MCSR. It's basically a soft, flexible catheter with tiny magnetic particles embedded right inside it. This means someone on the outside can use a magnetic field to bend it and steer it with incredible precision. And then you have the cargo. This little guy is the millimeter-scale untethered magnetic robot, or MUMR. This is our delivery drone. It's also magnetic, but it's totally wireless, and it's designed to make that final difficult journey into those smaller vessels where the mothership can't go. Okay, but how do you get them to connect and disconnect on command? This part is really clever. They designed a magnetic latch. So the drone is held in place because its magnetic pole is opposite to the one in the mothership. Opposites attract. To release it, they apply an external magnetic field that literally flips the drone's magnetic orientation. Now the poles are the same and they repel each other, pushing the drone out to go on its mission. It's like a remote-controlled clamp. Now, this graph looks a little intense, but what it's really saying is that the team had an incredible amount of control over this whole release mechanism. Just by changing the thickness of a tiny layer inside that latch, they could fine-tune exactly how strong the magnetic field needed to be to pop the drone out. And that's absolutely crucial for safety. You don't want this thing deploying by accident. So to test all this, the researchers used what's called an ex vivo porcine kidney model. And this is a really key detail. Ex vivo means they used a real pig's kidney, but it was outside a living animal, kept working with pumps. This gives you a super realistic environment to work in, but without all the complex, unpredictable variables of a living, breathing creature. All right, so they've got the setup, the plan is in place. Let's look at what actually happened. How did this system perform in the experiment? First up, they put the mothership through its paces. They had it navigate this transparent, 3D printed model that was a perfect replica of the complex, winding arteries inside a kidney. And it worked. This proved that the basic steering concept was solid. Next, they tested the drone, and they showed that it could be steered precisely even when it was going against a current designed to be just like the blood flow in a human artery. This was a big deal. It showed the magnetic forces were strong enough to handle real-world conditions. And this right here, this is the main event. This is the key finding of the whole study. Using nothing but standard medical ultrasound for guidance, the same stuff used in hospitals every day, the team successfully steered the mothership into that ex vivo pig kidney, released the drone, steered the drone around, and then, get this, relashed it to be pulled out. This was the first time the whole system had been demonstrated, from start to finish, in a realistic organ. Okay, Now for what is honestly the most important part of understanding any new piece of research, being crystal clear about what the study does not show. This is absolutely critical for keeping these findings in the right perspective. And you've got to give the authors credit here. They are very upfront about the limitations. First off, this has not been tested in a living animal, let alone a person. All this steering was done manually by an operator with a joystick. This thing wasn't driving itself. The experiment also didn't have to deal with challenges like a beating heart or the patient breathing. And finally, they note that getting the drone to relatch was actually pretty difficult, and sometimes the drone would just lose its magnetic grip and get swept away by the fluid. So, with all those pretty significant limitations, you might be asking yourself, so what? Why does this research matter? Well, let's look at the very specific context where this finding is actually a big deal. It matters because this is a potential engineering solution to that very specific and very hard problem we talked about, targeted therapy. For something like an organ transplant, being able to deliver drugs right to the new organ could be a total game changer. It could mean higher success rates for transplants and way fewer harmful side effects for the patient. The authors themselves wrap it up perfectly. They say this kind of technology could enable a new class of patient-specific drug delivery methods. It's all about moving toward a future of highly personalized, highly tailored medical treatments. So let's bring it all home. Let's circle back to our original question and get really clear on the final takeaway from this study. Okay, given everything in the paper, what can we responsibly say? Here it is. This research is a successful and very elegant proof of concept. It's a promising early step in engineering, but it is not a cure. It shows that this mothership and drone idea works, and it works well in a very controlled, non-living lab setting. And that leaves us with a final, really interesting question to think about. This study showed the amazing potential of remote-controlled delivery by a skilled human operator. But the next great leap, the next frontier, is autonomy. What's it going to take in engineering, in imaging, in AI for systems like this to one day navigate the incredible complexity of a living, moving body all on their own? Well, that remains a huge and fascinating challenge.